We all face problems. It's just a fundamental part of life, right? But what if our entire approach to solving them is kind of flawed? In this explainer, we're going to dig into an ancient text called the Vilya Sambodhini that offers this radical alternative, a framework for making our problems simply dissolve. Let's see how it works.
So right off the bat, the text hits us with this really powerful metaphor. It asks us to think of conflict not as some kind of battle, but as noise. All that stress, the arguments, that daily friction, it's all just a form of cacophony, that grating sound of things being out of sync.
And that, right there, is the big question, isn't it? If our lives sometimes feel like this total cacophony, how in the world do we create a symphony? How do we go from being overwhelmed by all that noise to actually becoming the conductor? Well, that's what we're here to find out.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll figure out where all that dissonance, that noise, is coming from. Then we'll unlock two powerful toolkits, the mythic methods for dissolving problems that are already here, and the foundational methods for stopping them from even starting. And finally, we'll see how this all leads us on the path to perfection.
Right. So to get to that harmony, we first have to understand the noise. Where does all this dissonance really come from? The text gives us a very clear and maybe even a little challenging answer.
So the first big idea from this framework is, get this, imperfection isn't some bug in the system. It's a feature of being human. It's actually our natural state. It stems from our desires, and those desires are inevitably going to create some friction with the world. The crucial first step here is to see this not as some kind of personal failure, but just as the starting point for literally everyone. I find this breakdown so useful. The text basically sorts all our problems into 4 buckets. First, you've got the immediate stuff, like fixing a flat tire. Then there are the problems that just need time to work themselves out, like a plant growing. Some need knowledge that we just don't have yet. And then there's this really fascinating 4th category, the unsolvable. For these, the only options are to either completely eradicate them or just endure them. Just knowing which bucket your problem fits into is a huge step forward.
So if imperfection is the starting line, what's the finish line? The text calls it objectomicum. It's such a great term. It literally means research of the self. It's that conscious journey we take from that natural state of imperfection toward a state of real harmony.
And the result of that whole journey is a skill they call Layan. This is the real goal. Imagine walking into a totally chaotic meeting or a tense family argument, and just like a master musician, being able to find the underlying rhythm and gently guide it towards harmony. That's Layam. It's not about fighting the current. It's about becoming part of the flow.
All right, let's get into the practical tools. The text gives us 6 main strategies, and we'll start with the first 3. It calls them the mythic methods. And these are really interesting because they're not designed to solve problems, but to make them completely irrelevant.
First up is the Vamana method. In the myth, a dwarf named Vamana grows so huge he covers the entire universe in just 3 steps. And the lesson here is honestly pretty profound. Instead of trying to shrink your problem, you expand yourself. You grow your skills, your mindset, your perspective, until that problem that once seemed absolutely massive becomes tiny and insignificant by comparison.
In this expansion isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. There's krama, which is that steady, predictable, step-by-step growth. Then you've got vikrama, which is more like a sudden, explosive leap forward. And parakrama is a deeper, almost invisible kind of transformation. But you know what? No matter how it happens, the core idea is exactly the same. Growth is the ultimate problem dissolver.
The second mythic method is named after Narada Muni, a sage who was famous for 2 things. Basically knowing everything that was going on and showing up at exactly the right place at the right time. The lesson here is that sometimes you don't need to use force. With deep knowledge and perfect timing, just your presence or one single small action can change the entire direction of a situation.
Our third method is the river method. In the story, a king doesn't just solve a single drought. He brings the entire river Ganga down to earth. This creates a source of unobstructable growth. So the strategy here is to shift your focus from fixing individual problems to building systems that create such an abundance of good things like resources or goodwill or creativity that the old problems are just washed away in the flow.
So those first 3 methods were all about dissolving problems that already exist. This next set of 3 is different. These are the foundational methods, and they're all about prevention, about building a life where that cacophony doesn't even get a chance to start.
The first foundational method is about establishing a guru,
or what you could call a gravitational point. Just look at the difference here. On one side, you've got total chaos, energies flying everywhere. On the other, the sun's gravity organizes everything into a stable, predictable system. The text says a core principle, a mentor, or even a clear mission can do the same exact thing for our lives, organizing our scattered energies and preventing chaos before it begins.
Oh man, this is such a cool, modern analogy for an ancient idea. Namarupa just means name form. The idea is that by giving something a clear name or identity, you anchor it to this whole network of meaning. The source compares it to software coding. You write a really complex function once, give it a simple name, and from then on you can just call that name to execute the entire block of code. Correctly identifying and naming things in our lives simplifies complexity and helps prevent misunderstandings. It's brilliant.
This final method is maybe the most profound of them all. It's called Shiva Linga intuition. The core idea here is that actions in the world are kind of like a wave hitting the shore. They're neutral, they just happen. It's our reaction that creates the ripples of conflict or harmony. An enlightened person, the text says, learns to merge their consciousness with this reality. They develop this intuition that allows them to choose the perfect reaction, or sometimes even the perfect inaction, to guide events without ever struggling against them.
So, after all that, where has this journey taken us? Well, to a fundamental shift in perspective. The goal isn't to get better at the brute force work of solving problems, it's to master the elegant art of dissolving them, creating a whole new reality by changing ourselves and the systems we operate in.
And the source material leaves us with this beautiful final thought. The path isn't about fighting imperfection, it's about rising above it. The tools for that are ever-flowing creativity and expansion. By constantly growing and creating, we build a current that's so strong that the old problems, that old landscape, it all just becomes irrelevant.
So I'll just leave you with this question. Think about a challenge you're facing right now. Instead of asking yourself, how do I fix this? What if you asked, how can I grow so big that this problem becomes small? How do I create a flow that just makes this whole thing obsolete? Which of your problems aren't waiting to be solved, but are actually waiting to be dissolved?